Direct from Fort Meade, Maryland, this is DINFOS Live.
Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of DINFOS Live. I'm Major David J. Murphy, a DINFOS instructor and your host for today's program. On this month's episode, we'll be talking about the complete process of audio production, from the actual content creation, starting with what it takes to actually record the audio, to editing the audio, and finally putting those finishing touches with appropriate music and sound effects to make your product sing. Joining us to discuss these topics are the Defense Media Activities, Production Services, Live Ops, Equipment, and Field Shop Manager, Mr. Pat Duran. Hello, Pat.
How you doing, sir?
Welcome back to the program.
Thank you,
Good to see you. Also joining us is DoD Post-Production Senior Editor, Mr. John Poindexter. Hello, John.
How you doing, sir?
Welcome. Have a seat, please. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. Before we begin talking about audio production, which is something near and dear to my heart and very important as we are content creators all, I want to let all our guests know and all our folks watching today know that if they have any questions for our guests, for our subject matter experts, to please leave them in the comments down below and we might just read them on the air. All right, well, let's get on with the questions, shall we, gentlemen?
Sure.
Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourselves, your experience, and your experience with audio production?
So, Pat Dorn, I'm a former Army broadcaster. I graduated from DINFOS in 2012 and came here to DMA and worked here for a few years, worked in several different areas within DMA. Retired in 2017 and came back to work here as a civilian and worked in our equipment shop, in our field shop. Now I'm the manager running that shop, and I love to share all of our knowledge on equipment and everything we get and make sure that our producers have the equipment they need to get the job done.
That's great, great. And John?
Yes, I'm a producer and editor for the Department of Defense here. I started as a freelancer before I became an editor for the Navy. I worked there for 10 years, and I worked on projects like daily news update, Navy Marine Corps news, promos and things for the Navy. And I transferred and now work for DoD, and I'm doing long form productions, documentaries, and other promos and things like that. And it's been a journey, but the audio has been a constant throughout the entire journey. So
That's awesome. Great to have your decades of experience here with us today to talk about this very important subject. And I guess importance is, my first question is that why is audio so important?
It's very important in my mind. Yeah, who's going to go first? A lot of attention isn't paid to audio, especially nowadays. People get hyper focused on the visuals, and audio is an afterthought. Audio, it should be held at the same level as what the visuals are going to be, because it can make or break a story you're trying to tell or information you're trying to get out. If you don't have good audio, people are going to just turn the page or click next and go on to something else, and they're not going to get what you're trying to spit out. I kind of a funny little joke about it. What's video without good audio or bad audio or no audio?
I don't know what.
It's security footage.
Very good.
So.
yes, audio is so important in our lives. I mean, it is the very first thing that we experience even before we're born.
Yeah.
As a fetus, we can hear our mother's voice. We can hear our father's voice before we're even out. And it is something that is a constant in everyday life. There's audio going on around us constantly every day, things that we don't even pay attention to.
Yeah.
But what we as producers and editors have to pay attention to, because we have to add that in to make the scene that we're working on, the projects we're working on, to make them more realistic, so that when you view it, you're not distracted by what's missing or what's included there that shouldn't be there. Yeah. So audio it's the thing that makes our lives go, I think. So it's very important.
Yeah, many people say that audio is more important than video in certain instances, right? In terms of what you're trying to convey and how long you want to keep people's attention. So when recording audio, what are some fundamentals that anyone should know and keep in mind?
The best thing is make sure you have the right tool for the job, right? So in particular, make sure you have the right mic to capture that audio.
Yeah.
There's tons of different mics and things out there for recording. So make sure you have the right mic, make sure you have the right recording device, and know your equipment.
Absolutely.
know it and play with it. Get the, build that relationship you can with it, and just practice with it. It's going to help you in the long run.
Yeah.
Yeah, mic placement, making sure that you collect room tone when you are doing a shoot. When you're editing and post-production, you need these things. The correct levels need to be captured.
Yeah.
You need to make sure you have the ambiance, you have to have sound effects, you have to have all these things that make a production interesting, but also remind the viewer of what's real in reality. So, yeah, you need to have all that stuff.
Okay. Well, besides fundamentals, what are some common pitfalls that many of those who are trying to record or edit audio encounter?
Well, we all know the one, like, where you forgot to push the record button.
Yeah, that's a big one.
I think everyone's experienced that one. I know
Sure,
I've done it
yeah.
several times.
Yeah.
Or you have that recording device where you have to actually hit the button twice. You put it in and it goes into standby mode. And you're like, oh, it's recording, and then everyone's experienced that. But
Or the batteries aren't fully charged,
or
and it dies halfway
that dies
through.
halfway through, or you didn't clear out your card.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
your card's full. But I think one of the biggest ones that because a lot of people think of audio as an afterthought when they're going out and they're getting ready to set up for an interview or something. They're recording some action. Something happening is they get hyper focused on the visuals, right? And then, does it look good? We got this interview set up, and worry about what's behind the person, and it looks good and all that sort of stuff. But then they never think about audio until right before they're ready to start asking the questions and recording. And then they're like, oh my Lord, there's a fan and it's making a humming noise. What do I do now?
Right.
Well, if you just did a little more due diligence and ahead of time, you would have noticed that. So that's a common thing that happens. I see it a lot.
Yeah, there's so much that you have to think about when you're preparing to do a shoot. And audio, it is something that kind of falls by the wayside for a lot of people, especially now when you have a lot of crews going out and it's a one-person crew.
Sure.
And it's the entire job is on that one person. They're so focused on getting the shot or getting the interview right, and they can't see what's happening with the audio.
Right.
It is a good thing to make sure your audio is set up before you start shooting.
Yeah.
That way you can be sure to have good levels. That way you can be sure to actually get the audio, and you're not finished shooting and you're kicking yourself at the end because you didn't get what you needed. And we've all been through it. We've all missed opportunities.
Right.
But make a checklist for yourself and make sure you go through those things when you're doing shooting and when you're getting prepared, so that when you go back to your editor, you have what's needed, and you say, oh, we didn't get the proper audio. We only have what's on the camera mic, and I want to show you a little bit of that a little later, but we only have what's on the camera mic, and it's really noisy. We hear all the cars, we hear all the people around us, but can you make it work?
Right.
And
Absolutely.
there are tools to help, but it's best to get it done correctly the first time.
Right. Start with right.
Start with right. What's that saying? Crap in, crap out. So if you don't record it right, it's not going to be good coming out. So you want to make sure you get it right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you mentioned, of course, most crews are one-person shows, right? So it's a lot of different things that one person has to be mindful of. But if you can get that audio recordist or that dedicated person focused on audio, I would say they're probably worth their weight in gold, right?
Right.
Very much so. Very much so. I mean, because there's so many different things that are happening. You go out and say you're conducting an interview, and one-man band, you're worried about, is my camera set up? Am I recording it right? Do I have my framing right? Does the, is
the lighting good? Can I see?
Is the lighting, well, not only that, but you're trying to make sure, is my aperture set right? Is my ISO set right? And is my lighting right? Where's the lighting at? Oh, by the way, also audio. Is my audio right? Now, what question am I asking? So the more people you can have on a shoot, the way better you're going to be, because then people can focus more on one individual thing and make sure that one individual thing is the best it can be.
Sure, absolutely. Well, we talked about, of course, being ready, knowing your equipment. So what kind of equipment can we use to actually record audio? I mean, I'm sure our audience has heard terms like lav mic and shotgun mic, but what do they all mean, and what?
Oh, so there's tons of things, and I did bring some examples. We'll start off right here.
Okay.
So there's a plethora. I mean, if there's a huge rabbit hole you could dive down into looking at all the different mics and pickup patterns and all the different types of way to record, all the different file formats and everything we record in.
Sure.
So one thing, we'll start right here real quick, just because it's going to be easier. We're wearing mics right here. The show,
right here.
how they're capturing our audio. We got lav mics right here, right? So it's just a wireless, it's a wireless mic pack. So we got a wired mic and a small mic right here that has an omnidirectional pickup pattern. So it's just picking up everything that's going on here. That's why we're on a set. So there's not a lot of other background noise. It's just our voices. All right, it's just a small wire. It goes down to a little pack we're wearing that wirelessly transmit to a base station. And then that base station feeds it into the plant. But one of the things is mic placement, right? So you want to make sure this little mic we got right here is placed in the right position. So normally you don't want it, a good distance, kind of close to where the sound's coming from, which is coming from my mouth, right? But also you think about it when you're especially on a show like this, or you're doing interviews with multiple people, or you have someone you're engaging with. So I'm engaging with Major Murphy right here, the host, right? So I'm sitting here, I'm going to be looking this way most of the time when I'm talking to him. I'm not going to be looking this way. I'm going to be looking this way. So we would want to have the mic either mounted right in the center right here or over on this side of the shirt. You see it a lot when people are wearing like sport coats. You can either choose one side. You want to choose the side they're going to be looking at most, right? Because if you put the mic over here, or if I put the mic over here and they're looking this way, there's going to be a difference. I don't know if you could probably hear it now, but there's a difference in the audio by me turning my head like this right now. So just mic placement is very important with that. And then we have some other stuff we want to go over here.
Let's go look at your stuff.
So we have just a few examples of microphones here. Everyone's seen a typical handheld microphone, right? And you'd be surprised how many people really don't understand how to properly use a mic like this. So it's just a typical dynamic mic. So when I say dynamic mic, it has a decent pickup, it's good quality, but it's relatively inexpensive, doesn't require any power, but it's also very robust, meaning you're not going to blow the mic out. And I don't say like you're not going to blow out your audio. You can still do that if it's something you're trying to record that's really loud. But what you're not going to do is by recording something really loud, you're not going to damage the mic because it's a very robust. It's not able to be blown out that way. But one of the things that's important with the handheld mic, you see it a lot with reporters, man in the street interviews, is placement of that mic. So you want to make sure when you're holding the mic, you don't want it like right up here into the thing, into their mouth. You want to just have, everyone's seen Hawaii, do a little hang 10, go like this, hold the mic. That's about how far away you want it from your mouth, right? And pointed at, once again, at the thing that's making the sound, right? My mouth is what's making the sound. So you have it right there. And then when you're doing like a man in the street interview, you also want to make sure you don't want to move the mic from whatever the source is that's making the sound, right? So as I'm talking, I don't want to go like this, because when I did that, guess what? That mic's not picking up my voice anymore. Same with him. If he's talking, I don't want him to pull away unless I'm an overzealous reporter and I'm just like, I'm the one that's going to be. We've seen those funny, they're doing that. So just make sure you properly use the mic. This is another example of a handheld mic. Can be used handheld, but mainly you see these used mounted on a podium. So this is an SM57. It's a dynamic mic, but it's got a more of a cardioid pickup pattern. So it's got a heart-shaped pickup pattern in front of it, and it doesn't pick up stuff from the sides. So when you got it mounted on a podium, trying to find the best angle, it's not going to pick up stuff over here. It's going to pick up more, like, so if I have it right here and it's on a podium, it's not going to pick up the stuff over here and back here as much as it's going to pick up what's coming right here.
It's got like a cone, kind of like this, right?
Yeah, so it's got a heart shape, so it kind of goes like this and comes around. So it doesn't pick up this time. Doesn't say it won't. That's not saying it won't pick that stuff up. It's just not going to be as pronounced. What's going to be pronounced is what it's pointed at. So a good mic for catching, this is used a lot in with musical instruments, snare drums and things are a good mic for that. A couple other examples here. On-camera shotgun mics. Got two different versions here. This is one that does not require power. Just mounts on top of like a DSLR or a mirrorless camera. Feeds right into the side of the camera. It's good for capturing that sound whenever you're out, just trying to get what's going on around you. This is another version of that, but this one requires power, and it has a little more options for some of the settings on it. First off, you can turn it on and off, but it's got a low pass, high pass filter for filtering out the higher frequencies and lower frequencies. It also has a way to increase to add some gain to it. So it's got a decibel button. It's got 2 settings, so you can, if you're trying to record some nat sound that's really low and you just want to make sure you have just a little bit higher, you can hit that button and turn it up. Just runs on little AA batteries, so I recommend just having a pack of batteries. You make sure they're going to be good. There are rechargeable batteries you can get with it, but then you're going to start asking yourself, hey, did I charge it or not? Whereas if you pull out a brand new pack of AA's, you're good to go.
Yep.
And then back over here, we got a shotgun mic on a boom pole. You see these used for nat sound recording, interview recordings. You might see someone holding it on a boom pole like this, pointing it at what they need to point it at. Normally you might see them standing there and they have a small mixer bag and they can adjust it as they go. But these mics are good for interviews, but you just need to be wary of your situation and what's going on around you, because they are directional to a point, right? So they're going to pick up what they're pointing at, but that doesn't mean they're not going to pick up things going on around them. So if you're going to use this for an interview, you want to make sure it's a quiet area, because it is going to pick up some of that sound, because sound does move around room, bounce off walls, and you might get that echo off a wall, and it's going to pick that up. Just make sure you have it close enough to the individual so it's getting nice, good, crisp, clean sound, and check your levels. You don't want to have it like, him way over there by the screen and have the mic back here and expect to get good sound. You want to have it close enough, just out of camera view, to make sure you capture that audio, and it can serve you well.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome. And you also have this audio recorder here, right?
Oh, yeah. So we also have an example of an audio recording device. These I highly recommend. So there's a lot of DSLRs and mirrorless cameras that you can record audio internally into the camera, right? But a lot of times they're recording in a highly compressed format like MP3. Still record good quality audio, but there's not as much data there for you to maybe make some corrections in post with it, right? It's going to fall off a lot faster. So a lot of times these things allow you to record in other formats, especially WAV or a higher
bit rate.
Not a bit rate. Drawing a blank on it. Like 44.1 hertz or 48 hertz. Drawing a blank on the thing, on what it's called right now. But it's just more data there.
Bit rate, right?
Not bit rate. Wow, I just totally data dumped a brain. I'll remember it here in a minute.
You'll-
But it just allows you to record in a WAV format. The data's there. It allows you to have it. And other things you can do on here, you can have 4 different channels, so you can record 4 different things at once, and independent control of each of those. So say you've got 2-person interview, you got mics on both of them. You can, and one person is really loud, has a real deep voice, loud like me. Everyone knows me. I'm pretty loud individual. You might have someone who's real soft-spoken with them. That way you can turn down the person who's louder, and you can turn up the person who's more soft-spoken, and even them out. Right, so it just gives you more control over your audio is what it does.
Okay, great.
And records externally, and then normally you can still record with like a shotgun mic on top of the camera to be able to sync it up later on in audio.
What I like about this is you can have it recording from multiple different sources. So you can have this, you have one of these XLR jacks, so redundancy, right? That's a big thing.
A lot of redundancy. Yeah, it allows you, say it's a very important, say you're interviewing, like SecDef or someone like that. And you're worried about your mics. You can put 2 mics on them and record them both at the same time, primary backup, right?
There you go. All right, well, great. Thank you for that showcase. Really appreciate it. I'm sure that we could talk about microphones all day. I'm sure there were a lot you couldn't bring today, right?
Yes. There's so much. I mean, if you really want to go down that rabbit hole, it's jump in 2 feet, get on YouTube, look at all the different stuff, and you can learn amazing things on there and how people do things.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll save that for another episode. All right. Well, you mentioned file types. So can you tell me a little bit about the differences between like MP3 and WAV and AAC and all these other audio types?
So, do you want to jump in?
Sure, yeah. WAV format, AIFF, which is max format, WAV is Windows. Those are uncompressed, lossless formats where the files are much bigger, but they're used by professionals for live television, for music professionals, and it gives you the best quality you're going to get. MP3s are compressed. They are basically made for streaming and for your phone, for cells, to be able to hear the music clearly, because the little speakers we have on our phones, the earbuds, they cannot cover the entire frequency spectrum like you can with the larger headphones or with the big speakers. So they have to give you a compressed format to fit everything in there.
Wow.
MP3 specifically does, it cuts off the high end and the low end where it's not necessarily in the hearing range of normal human hearing.
Yeah.
So it cuts off that area so it saves space. It allows it to be compressed so that you get everything in there. There's a lot of different formats, WAV, AIFF, PCM, but then you move down to the MP3s, and it's FLAC.
I remember what it is on the sampling rate.
Sampling rate.
So you got different sampling rates. So MP3 only goes up so far in sampling rate, whereas WAV does even higher. And then you got ACC. ACC is kind of in between MP3 and WAV, but it's still it's still considered a lossless. It just doesn't have a high sampling rate as WAV does, and it's more used in transmission stuff. So like when we go out and do our production truck, and we're doing a live show and we're sending it out via satellite. The format it's going out with the video is ACC, 128-bit or 128 hertz sampling rate. So a lot of information there going out, but that's where you mainly see it. But WAV is mainly used in AIFF. It's starting to pick up steam.
You've also got 32-bit float.
Yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but I want to talk about audio editing, and specifically, I'd like to know what you can do with your actual audio once you've recorded it. You get back to your desk, you've loaded it into your computer, and now you're staring at your audio editor of choice. What can you do with this audio to make it sing?
Okay, so John here, he's more of an editor than I am. I forayed, but he's senior editor for a reason, right? So me, as somebody who's a shooter and captures the stuff, I still think one of the best things you can do before we get to the editing stage of it is when you get out there and you record the stuff, come back, have that conversation with your editor, right?
Yeah.
So come back and let them know any challenges or things you might have come up with, because it helps him prepare for when he is going to start doing that editing. He already knows what he's going to be looking for.
Okay.
All right. So, hey, John, we struggle with this. The person was soft-spoken, or that. At this point, you're going to see this. That helps him prepare. Okay, I know I'm going to have to do a lot of editing on the audio for this, or I'm not going to have to do much editing on audio of this.
Sure.
So you can concentrate on the video side of it.
Yeah, just again, when you have the manpower, right, where you're going to have a separate editor who's doing audio, let them know what's going on and what they should expect or anticipate from the audio you recorded. Absolutely.
Correct.
All right, John, you got some a demo for us, I believe, right?
I do. There are a few things that I want to go over. I want to show, this is an example of what happens when you go and shoot and you forget to turn on your microphone. All you have is the camera mic. This is the sound of the room. This is a loud room. The interview's going on. I'm going to turn this on. That is the sound of the room with no speaking. That's how loud it is, and that is the normal level. You can try to do some low cut or high cut to get rid of some of that noise, which is high pass filter, low pass filter.
Okay. And
but the noise is still there.
Yeah.
Because you're using a microphone that captures the entire room.
Right.
So let's turn that off.
And there's probably a lot of background noise in the room, like an air conditioner or a fan or something going on,
There's a ton of things happening.
And that's some things you got to look for when you're doing an interview. You don't want to sit them right underneath an AC vent.
Sure. Yeah.
Or something like that, because you end up with something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. We usually have to turn off the AC unit when we're recording on some of the short films, right? Because that's just more noise you have to deal with in the post-production.
Yeah, there's places you might want them to turn the AC off because it's really cold.
Yeah.
And so we have two microphones on this subject here.
Okay.
It's an airman that did an interview for us, and I'm going to let you listen to her interview.
I had immediately checked the schedule
with the camera mic
on our floor to see if we had the
that's pretty
man
rough.
who need to go.
And I want to switch over to one of the Zoom products.
Okay.
And I knew I could, so I justified it to
There's a big difference.
Yeah, a
Oh,
lot
I see.
clearer, a lot easier
And
to listen to
he
for
said,
sure.
why not? So he
But you can also, when you come in to edit, you put on your high cut, your low cut, you make sure you trim off the low area below the speaking voice so that you are cutting off all of the low rumble and the noise that you get just in the room. That's what the high pass, low cut filter does. The high cut, low pass filter, you can take off the highs, which will be the highs in the air, the hissing, just the natural sounds and electronics, things that you will hear. You can put that on and trim it away. And I'll give you a quick example of.
And I didn't even really second guess it. I had
I'm going to trim
immediately
away
checked
some
the
of those.
schedule, on our floor to see if we had the manning for me to go, and I knew I could, so I justified it to
Sorry,
my
that's the wrong one. There we go.
No worries,
OIC,
no worries.
and he said, why not? So he submitted my name within like 45 minutes.
And so you can see it looks the same on the EQ, but the sound will change.
Yeah, no, absolutely, I can hear it.
So let's move over to when you get interviews in, you get some audio clips in and you need to sync things up real quick. You have your camera mic. You also have your audio from your recording device. And you want to sync it up real quick. There is a feature in Premiere called Synchronize. You can highlight both of your channels. You have your camera channel and you also have your audio from your Zoom. You can right click on there and hit Synchronize and it will open up a window and you want to choose your first audio, track 1, hit OK, and it will automatically
nice.
move the clip to match the audio from below.
Yeah, and I know that that feature exists on other nonlinear editors such as DaVinci Resolve. So again, we're not saying that one particular editor is better than the other one, but they all have similar or unique capabilities that just like you should know your equipment, you should know your editing software.
Correct. Some of these tools they have, I wish they had that when I was doing editing.
Oh my
'cause
gosh.
They made this stuff a lot easier now.
Indeed.
Yeah, this is a new feature. This is something that popped up around 2022.
Okay. Wow.
And it has been a part of Adobe for a little while.
Yeah.
And it is very useful, especially when you have a lot of interviews and a lot of things to go through and you need to match up your audio.
Yeah.
It's something that you can use, a tool that can use to move things quickly.
Yeah, especially if you don't slate, right? If you forget to slate, right?
Yes.
Just like your room tone, you gotta make
Or
sure to
if you
slate.
forget to turn on your time code and you don't have the numbers to punch in, you can use the waveform to synchronize your audio.
There you go.
The third thing I want to show quickly is when you have music playing and the audio is too loud, let's put it up here, and it gets in the way of,
And I didn't even really second guess it.
but it gets in the way of your interview.
on our floor to
The music is playing.
see if we had the manning for me to go, and I knew I could.
You can quickly use a tool called ducking. And in that instance, you will go to Essential Sound in Adobe Premiere, and you will choose Dialogue. In this case, I'm going to be using the lower channel. You click Dialogue.
Yeah.
That pops up a window, and then you highlight your music, and you click Music. And then you go to Ducking, which is in the Music section, and you click Generate Keyframes. And automatically, as you see, it created keyframes. So it will raise the volume of the music when there's no speaking, and it will lower the volume of the music when the interview is going on. So
nice.
Wow, I remember used to having to do that by hand and like create your key points and
Yeah.
technology.
So those are some
amazing.
quick tips that you can use to edit your audio quickly.
Yeah.
Of course, there's cutting and dissolves and all of that, but hopefully I know this is a intermediate class so that we know a little bit about cutting and dissolving and fading in and out of audio. Those things are the known when it comes to editing. So,
Okay,
but
great.
these are a couple of little tips.
Well, awesome. Thank you for the demo, John. Really appreciate that. And while you were doing that, we actually got a question from social media. Livingston Lewis asks, do you think that we will eventually move to 32-bit? And of course, what they're talking about there is similar to how we were talking about different file types. There's different ways to record and functionality and technology within the recorders, 16-bit, 24-bit, 32-bit. So can you talk a little about those different bit rates?
So to answer that question first, yes, it's a given. It's going to happen once we refresh our actual recording devices. Pretty much most companies that are making them now are adding that feature to them. It's just a given. So
It'll become the default, right?
Yeah, it's going to become the default. It's just like anything. As the technology progresses, the newer stuff is going to have those new features in them, and it's 32 bits coming. It's going to happen. But as far as the difference between, there's 16-bit, 24-bit, 32-bit. I mean, there's other nuances, but one of the main things is, 16-bit. I got notes here so I can remember because it's just too many numbers to remember.
Yeah.
So 16-bit, its dynamic range is good, but it will record all the way up to 96.3 dB. Right, and then 24-bit goes all the way up to 144.5 dB, and then 32-bit just goes to like ludicrous, recording levels and record all the way up to like 1528 dB.
Yeah.
Like not like we would ever, record anything that loud. Like if 1500 dB was played in here right now, we would all just fall down and die.
And explain what dB is.
Decibel level.
Okay.
So, but the 32-bit, one of the neat things about it, and you kind of you read some articles and see what people are saying about it, and one of the things you're going to key in and see people are saying is, oh, you don't have to adjust your levels. That's not necessarily true. You should still adjust your levels, but if you don't adjust them just right, with 32-bit, that data is going to be there, so you can make adjustments later on in post to fix the stuff.
Yeah.
And I know John has some more to talk about with 32-bit.
32-bit, yes, that is a format that is used mostly for professional musicians, music production houses, for television and film, for things that need to have a lower noise floor or a higher ceiling. For live concerts, you can capture a greater spectrum and a wider frequency range without any distortion. What you do have to be careful of, though, is if you have a preamp and you're going into your DAW, your digital audio workstation,
Okay.
you have to make sure your preamp is set correctly because you can overload the preamp and then your audio is still going to sound bad. It's going to still get distorted. If you're going in correctly or your levels are correct, always check your levels. If your levels are correct, then you have an almost unlimited level of a frequency range that you can use. Even if you go over, when you come back into edit, you can turn down your audio and it will be perfectly preserved.
Yeah.
You won't lose the tops. When you're using 16-bit and you go over and you overmodulate it, it will hit that ceiling and it will cause your waveform to have a flat top.
Yeah.
It'll looks like it's cut off at the top.
Yeah.
And you can't fix that because that once it's gone past that, you've lost your peaks.
Yeah.
But with 32-bit float, you can use it in that way and you can still go over. And it's great for music because it really captures the dynamic range of every instrument. And if the guitarist comes out on stage and he wants to play a solo and the audio didn't catch it on time, the engineer didn't catch it on time, it's forgiving.
Yeah.
But it is a much bigger file size. And now with HD, with going into 8K and all of that, it doesn't matter that much for file size because we need all of that file size is going to video. Audio is really not that much.
Right.
So I see that it is going to become more a part of the normal process.
Yeah.
But it is not necessarily needed for most things. And you can't really use it for MP3s and things like that because it just doesn't have the space for it.
Okay.
It's a compressed signal. So
Yeah. I'm sure it'll just be another selector in terms of your choices, in terms of how you want to record audio on any given device that you're using. So we've talked a lot about audio, mostly from the interview perspective. So what are some other ways that we can use audio to enhance our products?
sound effects,
Sound effects,
ambience,
music,
nat sound.
tons of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, we can go on for days of things like that. I mean, just adding little sound effects here. Like, use an example. I went down to Puerto Rico to interview some veterans for National Hispanic American Heritage Month. And, you know, a lot of these guys, Korean War veterans, they're in their late 80s and things like that. So they aren't getting around that much, all that well. So there wasn't a big opportunity to get video of them doing stuff, to get B-roll to go along with just an interview shot.
Right.
So all we had was interview shot, but some of them brought in photo books of their time in the service.
Wow.
So they had all sorts of pictures and things that could go along with that. But once again, we ran into the issue, the only audio I have is just that interview audio. So what else can I use? So what we did, a normal thing, we took pictures of their pictures so we could use them. And then, but it was pictures of them in their time in the service. Maybe they're in training, shooting a machine gun, or running an obstacle course. So you can go find some sound effects, you know, of you know, military people making noise, or you can go out and record your buddies doing it, make your own sound effect.
Yeah.
You can get a machine gun noise, and you can subtly throw that over that picture and just add that little bit extra to help tell you that story.
What's fun about working for the U.S. military is that every plane, every ship, every piece of equipment has its own unique sound.
Yeah.
You know, I have some of the old guys that come by and say, that's not the sound for that particular plane. It has a much lower sound, it has this or that, that's got propellers on it. You have to be very specific with the sounds that you use. And that makes sense to go when you go to do B-roll and you capture, you know, just images that are happening in your scenes. Get that sound while you're there.
Yeah.
So you can match it instead of putting a prop plane on a jet. It doesn't work. So you have to also be specific in your choices and what you use, and be, you know, artistic in your choices as well. As well as music. Adding music to your productions is important to, you know, make a good choice in what you're using to create that emotion. So,
and it's not easy when it comes to music, because music can help you set the mood. It can help your pacing of your story. I've spent, I don't know, working on things where I'm going to put a music track in there and I'm going to add music to it, and the online libraries and some of the things we use, hours and hours just sitting there listening to stuff and throwing it and trying it, and no, that doesn't work right, and then doing it, and then you think you found the one, and then you've come across another one and you're like, wait a minute, which one? You know, one of the good thing of that, you're going to spend hours doing it, but it's going to be worth it. It's going to make your product that much better. And one of the things I can say for that is, if when you're doing that, have someone else listen to it too.
Oh, okay.
You know, because that might help out. They might have a different perspective, and they might say, well, you know, I really like that, and it's going to help you whittle down to that one perfect song to use.
Yeah, let's go back to that music selection process, because, you know, music is such an integral part in many of the products that we create, in addition to sound effects. And so when you're looking to actually decide what piece of music to go along with, you know, your content, are you having to skim through the entire library of thousands of songs each time, or what are you doing to try to mitigate that work efficiency?
well,
Well,
go ahead.
Fight. No, I mean, a lot of the places you can go for that, they have ways to whittle down. You know, they have
Libraries.
you know, libraries and filters by mood, by
Okay.
you know, what's happening, action, motivational, sad, and all the different things. So I mean, you can filter through and find what you need to find.
But you need to find music that is going to move you and move your emotions, because in order to make a production that is going to have effect on people, you want something that's going to be emotional, that's going to cause, you know, something to happen inside when you hear it. And if you just grab anything and put it on there, you're making a mistake sometimes. You might, you know, be lucky if you're, you know, just picking numbers out of a barrel, but you know. But what you want to do is to, when you're going through these libraries, create folders for yourself and select pieces that you like, but you're not going to use right then. It's like, oh, this works really well for this. It works really well for that. Put it aside so that when you're working fast, you have to go back. you have choices already that you pulled out. You don't have to go through 1,000 sounds to be able to hear something. You go back to your folders that you have. I have this set up. I need something patriotic. You have 6, 7, 10 different, selections, and you can go through them quickly, and and you're familiar with them. So you know what you can use.
I have that too. I did the same thing.
Yeah, it's for speed. It's for something that you can use to save time and to get your work done, and you know it's going to be impactful because you've already experienced the music and how it works for you. So.
Yeah, and one thing I'll say is that many of our bands in the military actually have their own music library. So if anyone might be interested in trying to find music before they necessarily have to go to a subscription service, there are musical offerings provided by many of our bands. So that could be a resource you might want to look into. Now, obviously, we've talked about music and sound effects, and getting back to sound effects for a minute, have you used sound effects in your projects? And if so, how have you used it, including NAS sound?
Well, sound effects are so interesting because you can find them in everyday things. You can find them in everyday environments. A lot of times I'll be at home and I'll hear like something happening in the background or some clicking or ticking or a bug on the window. And I'm like, that's great. Let me grab my phone and record this real quick. There's so much that you can grab and add to a particular scene. And you can change those sounds with EQ, with different effects, with phasing, other things you can do to make those sounds different, especially for sci-fi things or anything you're doing. You can grab a sound and make it work for different scenes and different environments. So,
I got a good example of that. So I was working on a piece here with someone who used to work here in Air Force production, Pete Ising. You remember Pete Ising? So he was working on a piece, and it was a chess game. So he was kind of using a chess game and an image of a chess game, two people playing chess, to tell the story about thinking strategically, globally, right, and how pieces are moved around the board globally, with the world we live in now. And so we had this chessboard, and we had one of those old-fashioned, clocks for, checking time. When a person does their move, boom, now the clock hits start. But the problem was it didn't make a good ticking noise. It wasn't really loud. It was real low, and it was hard to capture. We tried. So we went and found a ticking one that was loud. And he had a clock. He had one of those old-fashioned alarm clocks, and it made a good loud tick. So we just recorded it.
Okay.
And then all we had to do was a little editing magic behind. It wasn't keeping pace with the hand that was on the clock we were using in the video. So we just kind of slowed it up or sped it up to match up. So it matched. So when the arm moved, it ticked.
Right. Well, as the audio experts you are, have you found any good examples of well done audio content and things that you've seen on television or on the internet?
Yes, I mean, the movie Interstellar.
Okay.
There's a scene when they go down to the planet and the water planet.
Yeah.
And there is, in the soundtrack, there is a tick of a clock going through it, which represents the passing of a year.
Yeah.
Every time you hear a tick, that's a year passing.
Sure.
And so it was so well done so that it was kind of woven into the soundtrack. So it became louder and louder as things got more and more intense. It grew in volume, and that was a great production there, of course. Yeah. But the other thing was A Quiet Place, which was a film that I found very, very interesting because of the lack of dialogue, and especially the opening scene of that film. There was the absence of sound that made it so wild, because I sat in the theater watching it, and I could hear someone chopping on popcorn 20 seats ahead of me, and I'm sitting in the back, and it was so loud it was almost uncomfortable because the actors are going about doing their thing, but all you could hear was a little bit of shuffling of their feet, quietly opening doors and things like that. And it was just a great way to highlight what you can do with sound. It's not always the sounds that you hear, but it's also the absence of sound that can make a great point.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
I mean, we are a military organization, so I'm going to lay out the one everyone knows, Saving Private Ryan, the opening scene of that movie.
Yeah. Sure.
And all the sound effects they used on that. I mean, that opening beach with the storm on the beach and just all the bullet sings and tings and explosions and everything that was just going nuts in that beginning. There's actually a really good documentary where they're talking about how they did the sound for that. I can't remember the name of it, but you can see it's literally hundreds of tracks of audio in their editor, putting all that stuff together. It was just amazing what they did with that. Yeah. So it's a really good thing to go look and see things like that.
Yeah, that's where you're actually creating like a soundscape. You know, you're trying to kind of build the mood and carry that through, and it's really amazing what they can do. And you know, they've got the right tools and thinking about everything and all the production aspects that have to go into creating the right sound and feeling and mood. You know, I'm sure many of the people watching right now want to become better audio engineers, want to know their products better, be better at recording and editing audio. What educational resources would you direct our audience toward to help them achieve that goal?
YouTube.
YouTube. It's the go-to. It's free. But there's tons of information you can get from there. I mean, you name it. Mic placement, what mic to use for certain situations. There's people that are making videos and talking about it and stuff.
Sure.
And then there's tons of other classes and resources. Like LinkedIn Learning has tons of classes, DINFOS.
DMA Learning has, great audio classes. There's so many audio pros out there. They're speaking on the techniques and how to make your stuff work and work better. And it's free.
Yeah.
You know, again, as we were young, you had to pay thousands of dollars to go and study audio engineering.
Yeah.
And you still can.
You still can,
but there's free resources.
now there's free resources. Everyone's working at home on their DAWs and, working on music and doing all the stuff at their homes, and they're able to study on YouTube and learn how to get better about EQing, about cutting and pasting and dissolves and all of that stuff. It's all there.
Yeah.
So.
And I think just getting into the programs and experimenting with them, right? Because there's plenty of free programs out there that can give you many of the tools that we talked about today with regard to adjusting and editing your audio. So just getting in, getting your hands dirty and experimenting, right?
Yeah, get in there, play with them, and see what they're capable of, what they can't do, what they can do, and try it out.
It's a very deep subject. And you can go for weeks working on audio. And there's some people that work for years and years and years just to get good at what they do. Yeah. And I can attest to that because it has taken me years to get as good as I am. And I don't even think that I'm all that great right now.
There you go.
But
always growing, right?
Yeah, you have to keep growing and keep learning.
Yeah.
Because that is the key. There's always new technology coming out, there's always new programs coming out. And always new things to catch up on.
Right.
So, just keep growing, keep learning. Yeah. And there's always places to go to get that information. So.
Well, maybe we'll just keep the show going indefinitely so we can continue to talk about the topics. But no, we do have to end our show. And before we say goodbye to you, before we end our show, is there anything else you'd like to add?
So I would like to say get out there and play with the programs because they're ever evolving. And one of the things you're starting to see now, especially with a lot of linear editors and audio editing, you're starting to see AI become more prevalent and stuff. Absolutely. Like there's a little bit here and there, but now they're starting to come out with a lot more stuff, and it's more robust, and especially for audio correction. So I have my own Adobe account, and I was just playing with it, and I just wanted to see what it could do. So I'm gonna purposely record some jacked up audio and just make it overmodulated, make it horrible, and really put this AI to the test and see what it can do. And I was pretty impressed with what it could do. Yeah. So stay abreast of what's going on out there and just play with it. Don't be scared of it. Just give it a try and see what you can do and know your equipment and what it's capable of.
Yeah, I played around with a tool that just, one little click of a button in voice isolation, and it can have horrible background noise, and you'll be able to hear the speaker crystal clear, like they're in a studio. It's amazing. Mr. Poindexter.
Well, what's key about that, though, is that is a reproduction of your voice and not your actual voice. So it removes the audio, samples your voice, and then spits it back out as your voice.
Yeah.
But what I would say is to get it right from the beginning. Yeah. Always get room tone because you never know when you'll need it. If you don't have it, then you're kicking yourself.
Yeah. Exactly.
And room tone when you're going to be conducting an interview, not before when there's no one in there, no one standing there, when everyone's in there.
Yes, the room is going to sound completely different if you're recording and there's no one in the room. You're going to have echo and all of this reverb coming at you. But when the room is filled with people, the sound bounces off of everyone that's in there. So you want to get room tone when the production is full, the room is full. And that will give you the best sound and make it sound as if you can use it. You can use that to edit and to take out, you know, problems and issues and faux pas and things like that.
Absolutely.
So always get room tone and always check your levels.
Awesome.
You know,
Great
ahead of time.
advice. Extremely invaluable. In fact, let's get room tone right now. Okay, 60 seconds. Quiet, everybody. Just kidding. All right, well, that's our show for this month. I want to, of course, thank our guests for stopping by and sharing their knowledge and expertise with us. We truly appreciate it. I'd also like to thank you all for taking time to watch our program and ask your questions. Remember, if you prefer to listen to our show rather than watch it live, you can actually listen to it as a podcast. Just search on your podcatcher of choice for the term DINFOS Live. Now, join us next month on April 24th at 2 p.m. Eastern when we'll be talking about the visual documentation course and how it prepares our combat camera specialists for the career field. For everyone at DINFOS and the Defense Media Activity, I'm Major David J. Murphy, and we'll see you all next month. Bye, everybody.